Hey guys, welcome to Journey of Relaxation. Tonight we slip back into a world of powdered wigs, broken breadlines, and surprisingly some of the most passionate hair choices in European history. You're in Paris, it's the late 1780s, and yes, you're poor, tired, and deeply annoyed that the king's lunch probably cost more than your rent. But as you trudge through the narrow streets dodging chamber pots and bad violinists, you start to notice something strange. Everywhere you look, people are kind of cosplaying ancient Rome. Tightly curled hair, shaved temples, crowns of laurel tunics at the theater, and those weird forehead-parted styles that scream SPQR but make it fashion. And here's the kicker. The people leading this revolution, the ones literally shouting for heads to roll, are the most obsessed with these Roman-inspired styles. It's not just hair, it's identity. They see themselves as the new Brutus, the new Cincinnatus, the new People's Tribune, only with worse hygiene and possibly more powdered sugar in their wigs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're settling in, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake on a straw mattress in a cramped attic in Paris. Through the slatted shutters, dawn crawls in with a pale gray light, filtering over rooftops and chimney stacks, like powdered sugar on yesterday's stale brioche. Down below, the streets hum, carts clatter, butchers shout, and somewhere someone's already arguing about bread prices and Rousseau. You rise, rub your eyes, and tuck your hair just so. Because you, like everyone else in this rebellious city, have started wearing it Roman. You're not alone. All around Paris, revolutionaries are flocking to Roman styles like moths to an oil lamp. Why? Because when you're toppling kings and burning the symbols of monarchy, you need a new identity. And what better than the ancient Romans? They got rid of kings, they had republics, and they looked fabulous while doing it. Your friend Jacques, who now insists on being called Brutus in public, has shaved his temples and trained his remaining curls into a stately fringe. He claims it's a tondu alla Titus inspired by busts of the Emperor Titus. Never mind that Titus was an emperor, not a republican. Jacques insists it's the republican look. Historians still argue whether the Roman references were based on any real understanding of Roman politics, or just really excellent marble busts in the Louvre. You head down to the square. At a cafe where waiters now refuse to wear powdered wigs too aristocratic, you sip bitter coffee next to people whose hairlines resemble sculptures more than humans. A man stands on a barrel quoting Cicero with the flair of an actor and the accuracy of a gossip pamphlet. His hair, a carefully arranged curly crop that practically shouts "Et tu brute." A woman beside him has styled her curls into an updo worthy of a Roman matron and accessorized with a tiny tricolor cockade because even revolution needs branding. It's all part of a trend. Fashion plates from this time show women in sheer dresses with empire waists and Greek sandals à la grecque, while men walk about in short jackets and Roman-styled tunics. But it's the hair that truly seals the deal. Short curly styles à la Titus become the rage-dethroning powdered wigs in favor of something that says, yes, I might be a baker, but I also might assassinate a tyrant after breakfast. There's an irony, of course. The revolution's leaders detest the nobility and everything old France stood for. Yet many of them, especially the Jacobins, seem to crave the nobility of Rome. Not nobility by birth, but nobility of virtue. They read Plutarch, they quote Livy, and they style their hair like characters from busts they barely understand. Imagine trying to overthrow your government while simultaneously raiding its museum gift shop for grooming inspiration. You walk past a shop window, a former wig maker's that now sells patriotic ribbons and Republican buttons. In the glass, your own reflection catches you off guard. Your hair's shorter than it was a month ago. You've started using olive oil instead of pomade, hoping to get that windswept Roman bounce. A woman passing by gives you an approving nod. Très Republicain, she says. You nod back, though you're not entirely sure if that's about your ideas or your sideburns. At night in salons and clubs, people debate rights, liberty, and laws, but also who pulls off the Brutus cut better. Some say Robespierre with his severe sweeping style embodies Roman moralism. Others prefer Saint-Just's neatly disciplined ringlets, the kind that suggest quiet but deadly judgment. One radical newspaper even publishes a hair chart, choose your Republican hero look. Of course, all this admiration for Rome comes with a few blind spots. Revolutionary Paris is dirty, hungry, and unstable. Ancient Rome, despite its artistic glow-up in everyone's imagination, was also dirty, hungry, and unstable. You wonder sometimes if the revolution is just trying to trade one disaster for another, but with better grooming. Still, in a city full of chaos, the hair is oddly comforting. There's order in those tight curls, dignity in those center parts, meaning in every snip and comb. You watch a group of boys play tribunes and tyrants in the alley, one of them proudly sporting a freshly snipped Caesar fringe, courtesy of a kitchen knife and his older sister. He swings an imaginary sword and yells, "For the Republic." His voice cracks. He's 9. You chuckle softly. You're sleep-deprived, probably underfed and being stalked by political instability, but your hair is finally cooperating. That's gotta count for something. It's hard to say what's more terrifying, the sound of the guillotine's blade dropping, or the silence that follows it. You're standing near the Place de la Révolution, just far enough back in the crowd to avoid the splash zone, but close enough to smell the blood, the bread crusts, and the expensive cologne still clinging to the condemned. And oddly, amid the horror, and the shouting, and the tumble of heads into baskets, you can't help but notice everyone's hair looks amazing. Neatly clipped curls, precise partings, sculpted forelocks. Every person being marched up the scaffold today looks like they've stepped out of a Roman bas-relief. Even the doomed aristocrats, supposedly the enemies of the people, seem to have adopted the same clean-cut Julius Caesar meets Barber of Seville aesthetic. If you're going to be executed for treason, at least you die looking like a Roman hero. The guillotine might sever your spine, but it cannot touch your layers. The trend is everywhere now. You can't visit a public square without spotting at least 3 Brutus bobs and a Titus shag. Robespierre, who's practically the revolution's poster boy, famously wears his hair short and severe. No powder, no wig, just an austere style that screams moral rigidity and civic virtue. And while some people are terrified of him, okay, many people, others, swoon over his cheekbones and his tragically obsessive forehead curl. That one lock of hair, always perfectly centered, has launched 1,000 political crushes. A few pamphlets even speculate whether he trained it himself every morning using a drop of rosewater and a silver spoon. But this obsession with hair isn't just about looks. In this new republic, every aspect of daily life is freighted with meaning. The right hairstyle isn't vanity, it's virtue. Looking Roman means looking Republican, which means looking innocent, enlightened, and most importantly, not guilty. It's like a passport for your head. Some whisper that people with the wrong kind of hairstyle, too powdered, too frilly, too Versailles, are more likely to be accused of counter-revolutionary sympathies. Historians still argue whether any cases were officially decided by coiffure, but dozens of anecdotal tales suggest it was a factor, even if no one would admit it outright. Take the case of Charlotte, a seamstress you met last week. She tells you over stale wine that her brother was questioned by a revolutionary patrol because his hair was tied back in a ribbon. A ribbon. Not even a fancy one. He tried to explain it was just practical. He was painting walls and didn't want streaks in his curls. But they didn't buy it. He escaped with a warning and a brutal haircut in the street. And now Charlotte cuts her own hair every few days, snipping away at anything that might seem too ancien regime. Her bangs are uneven, but her conscience is clear. Meanwhile, in prisons like La Conciergerie, prisoners awaiting trial are still doing their hair. You think it's absurd until you visit one. The women plait each other's curls by candlelight. The men comb their locks with forked sticks or spoon handles. One even uses a sliver of glass to keep his sideburns tidy. "If I'm going to lose my head," he mutters, "I might as well look like Cato when I do." You nod solemnly. The glass trembles in his fingers. There's no punchline here, only resolve. Outside, even the children play execution. They build cardboard guillotines and line up dolls with carefully clipped Roman fringes. It's equal parts adorable and disturbing. You catch one girl brushing the curls on her doll with a whisper, "You're brave citizen. The Republic sees you," then clunk off with its head. You can't shake the feeling that you've wandered into a world where fashion, fear, and philosophy are all tangled up in the same curl. One day you pass a new kind of pamphlet stand. Among the usual manifestos and grain price lists, you find a hand-drawn guide, how to cut your hair like a true citizen. It's got instructions, illustrations, even moral annotations. Avoid the wig symbol of courtly decay. Seek simplicity, echoes of Roman virtue. And your favorite, if in doubt, emulate Brutus, unless you're planning to spare Caesar. You chuckle, but not too loudly. Someone might think you're mocking the revolution, and in this climate that's a dangerous impression to give. Just last week, a wig maker named Claude was arrested after refusing to shorten his customers' styles to the new Roman standard. They said he was hoarding aristocratic materials. Some say he was really just sad that powdered hair had gone out of fashion. Others whisper he was supplying wigs to émigrés across the border. Either way, Claude disappeared. His shop is boarded up now, but the sign still hangs Elegance Tradition Powder. It hasn't aged well, and yet for all the tension, there's something communal in it too. In markets and taverns, you hear people ask strangers how they achieve their curls, what oil they use, whether they trim with blades or burning cloth. It's almost touching, this tiny act of grooming in a sea of uncertainty. A shared style for a shared purpose. It reminds you that even amid the blood and bread lines, humans still cling to symbols, to rituals, to things they can control. Hair, after all, is one of the few things they can. By now, your own hair has become a small point of pride. Every morning you wet it with rainwater collected from the eaves, twist it into those not quite ancient curls, and comb your side fringe until it suggests a hint of Republican gravity. Your reflection may be blurry in your cracked mirror, but you know what you're signaling: I belong here. I believe in this. Please don't put me on a list. And as the bells of Notre Dame toll somewhere in the foggy distance, you remember what someone said in a cafe just yesterday. In Rome, the tyrants fell when the people remembered who they were. You run a hand through your hair. Maybe that's why you all do it. Maybe it's not vanity. Maybe it's memory. You duck into a narrow alley just as rain begins to fall. Not the poetic kind of rain, but the full, sloppy, splash-your-socks Parisian downpour. At the far end, nestled between a crumbling bakery and a suspiciously quiet cobbler, you spot a painted sign swinging in the wet breeze: Salon Républicain, Coiffure Civique et Morale. You push the door open and step into warmth, candlelight, and the unmistakable smell of bergamot pomade mixed with political conviction. Inside, it's not just a barbershop, it's a revolutionary forum with scissors. There's a man in a stained apron snipping precisely at the nape of someone's neck, while loudly quoting Rousseau. A woman in the corner is stirring a bowl of egg yolk and lemon juice, explaining how natural products cleanse not just the scalp but also the soul. Another customer debates the merits of the curly Brutus versus the wavy Titus, while a young boy sweeps hair off the floor and hums La Marseillaise under his breath. You take a seat on a creaky bench and glance at the posters on the wall. Roman busts annotated with hairstyle diagrams, a flyer for a debate club called Les Tondeurs de la Vertu, the Shearers of Virtue, and a hand-lettered slogan: La vraie révolution commence par la tête. The real revolution starts with the head. You smirk. That one works on multiple levels. A barber approaches middle-aged, missing 2 fingers, but with immaculate sideburns. First time, he asks, dipping his comb in a bowl of warm water. You nod. He runs his hand through your overgrown locks and tisks softly. You've got the bones of a Brutus, but the fringe of a Bourbon. Dangerous times for such confusion. You sit very still. As he begins to trim, he lectures. This is not just grooming. He says it's moral alignment. A true revolutionary haircut must be free of aristocratic vanity, but not sloppy. Even Cincinnatus, he says, wore his curls with discipline. He pauses to hold up a tiny bust of Cincinnatus as a reference. You nod solemnly. You have no idea who that is. The barber shop, you learn, has been operating in secret since the early days of the Revolution. When wigs first began to fall out of favor, these places sprang up as safe havens for the powdered and confused. But now, they're neighborhood institutions. Part salon, part philosophy circle, part gossip hub. It's where you come to shape your image and your political positioning. Wearing your hair too long suggests decadence. Too short, and you might be mistaken for a royalist soldier. It's a tightrope, and the blade of the scissors is very close to your neck. Some historians argue whether these barbershops were actually as influential as the speeches in the National Convention. But you suspect most politicians got their ideas and their trims in places just like this. The barber points out a young man leaving the shop, his curls fresh and glistening. He's got a pamphlet coming out next week, he says. Claims Brutus wore his hair short to mourn the death of the Republic. Absolute nonsense. But the style will catch on anyway. You're not sure whether to laugh or applaud. There's a fringe benefit pun absolutely intended to all of this. People feel seen. When you walk into a room with a head of hair that shouts SPQR, you're telegraphing allegiance without saying a word. And in an era where speech can get you imprisoned, sometimes your bangs have to do the talking. Take Madame Lebrun, the widowed grocer who shaved her head entirely last month. She claimed it was in solidarity with her imprisoned son, but also because she refused to maintain one more curl for a society that forgot the hungry. Now she wears a tricolor bonnet over her stubbled scalp and sells bread with a righteous scowl. Locals bring her flowers. A few started shaving their heads too. Whether it was protest or practicality or both, no one's quite sure. But everyone knows what it means. And then there's the pomade trade. Once limited to the aristocracy, it's exploded among the middle and lower classes. Recipes are circulated in handwritten booklets and shouted across market stalls. Lard and lavender, olive oil and crushed rosemary, beeswax and citrus peel. There's even talk of an underground collective making tricolor hair wax for especially patriotic curls. One seller swears her formula smells like liberty. You're not sure what liberty smells like, but you buy a small jar anyway. Still, there are dangers. You overhear a story of a man accused of being a spy because his sideburns were too English. His defense: I was trying for Cicero. They spared him, but only after an impromptu history quiz and a forced restyle on the courthouse steps. Apparently nothing says I love France like an emergency haircut in public. Even children have joined in. School teachers trying to cultivate moral character now include Roman hairstyle diagrams in lessons. One pupil writes an essay titled, "Why My Forehead Honors the Republic." Another builds a diorama of the Senate stabbing Caesar, each figure sporting carefully crafted modeling clay curls. You think back to your own cut. It's shorter now, sharper. You catch your reflection in a rain-slicked window as you leave the shop. You look older, sharper. A bit like that one statue at the Louvre with the big nose and the judgmental expression. You think he might have been a senator or a god. Doesn't matter. You like it. On your way home, you pass a group gathered around a street performer reciting lines from Corneille's Cinna. He's dramatically styled his dark curls falling in theatrical spirals. A few people in the crowd sigh audibly. You hear someone whisper, "So noble, so Roman." Another scoffs, "Too much product. Looks like a royalist." You smile to yourself, because in this city that argument could go either way and might just decide who ends up getting applauded or arrested. It's a crisp morning in Paris, and you find yourself lingering in front of a bookshop window. Not for the pamphlets this time, but for the fashion plates. Hand-colored engravings are displayed like political posters, showing the latest looks in revolutionary chic. And right there in the center, flanked by laurel leaves and bold lettering, a woman in a flowing white gown, her hair arranged in stiff ringlets across her forehead, crowned with a Roman-style fillet. Beneath the image reads the caption, "Citoyenne vertu coiffée à la romaine." You don't know whether to laugh or salute. Across the city, style is staging its own revolution. Gone are the elaborate court wigs, gone are the powdered towers that scraped the ceilings of Versailles. Instead, citizens wear simplicity with theatrical seriousness. Hair has gone short, structured, and classical, imitating not just Rome's heroes, but its marble. You pass a cafe where a pair of lovers are debating hairstyles with more fervor than tax reform. She argues for the clean lines of Livia Drusilla. He insists the curled severity of Marcus Aurelius better suits the new republic. This is what things have come to virtue through volume patriotism by parting. You're not even surprised anymore. In the salons once used for aristocratic flirtation, revolutionary women now gather in reading circles and debate clubs. They're still serving pastries, but now the sugar-dusted fingers also flip through Rousseau and Tacitus. One hostess leans forward, hair in an aggressive pile of tight, structured curls, and says, "To appear Roman is to act Roman. Would you wear Brutus's hair and not his courage?" No one dares say they're just here for the tea. Historians still argue whether women in the Revolution had any real political agency, or whether they were simply mimicking their male counterparts. But in these spaces where style meets ideology, women are redefining what virtue looks like, sometimes with more conviction than the men who dominate the assembly. Their hair is as much a uniform as a red liberty cap or a tricolor sash. But the influence doesn't end with everyday citizens. You attend a theater performance later that week, an original revolutionary tragedy, of course, and it's practically a costume parade of antique aspiration. On stage, a Jacobin hero gives a rousing speech about civic duty, while dressed like a Roman senator, his curls glistening under the torchlight. The audience bursts into tears. Behind you, someone whispers, "He's the image of Publius." You're not sure who Publius is, but you nod sagely anyway. Even statues are getting restyled. Sculptors across Paris are hammering away, reshaping busts and monuments to reflect the new aesthetic. The old powdered periwigs have been chipped off, replaced by textured waves and disciplined curls. You spot a freshly installed bust of Rousseau with a suspiciously Titus-like haircut. It's subtle, but not subtle enough. You visit one of these sculptors, an old man named Louis, who once carved cherubs for church altars and now chiseled cheekbones into Republican heroes. His studio smells of wet clay dust and beeswax. He shows you a bust of a recently guillotined revolutionary leader. The likeness is uncanny, and so is the hair, short, severe, with a hint of virtuous pomade. They said he was a traitor, Louis mutters, brushing a hand over the curls. But look at this line. That's not the forehead of a traitor. That's Cicero's brow. You nod, not entirely sure what Cicero's brow is supposed to look like, but moved all the same. There's something touching about this commitment to styling a better world, literally shaping the heads of the new republic to reflect a higher ideal. It's hair as hope. Of course not everyone is thrilled. An elderly woman on the street stops you and sneers at your Roman fringe. What is this nonsense, she growls. My husband died wearing his powdered wig with pride. He said only dogs and soldiers wore their hair short. You smile politely and walk on. Powdered wigs are vanishing, yes, but the memories remain. And so do the opinions. In print shops, new almanacs are being sold with horoscopes, lunar phases, and hairstyle charts. One edition includes a guide titled Hairstyles of the Revolution from Marat to Minerva. Each style is illustrated along with a short biography and a suggested pomade recipe. A woman on the corner reads hers aloud. To achieve the coiffure de la liberté, apply lemon juice and curl upward. Best worn during tribunals, public readings, or bakery riots. Back at your lodgings, you stand in front of the mirror. You've begun to study the Roman statues more carefully, noting the curls that frame the temples, the way foreheads are left bare as a stage for thought. You tilt your head. You're starting to see the resemblance, not to the statues, but to the seriousness behind them. You try to mimic that stare, that nobility. It doesn't quite work, but the effect is there. And though the streets outside are filled with fear, suspicion, and the occasional riot over wine allocations, there's also an odd, gentle pride in how everyone looks. Because somehow, even amid chaos, your city has chosen this to walk around looking like fallen senators and heroines of antiquity. It's absurd, and it's beautiful. You run a comb through your fringe. The curl falls just right. Tomorrow you'll visit a new sculpture going up in the Tuileries. Someone said it's Minerva or maybe Liberty. But the important part is she's got Roman curls. Evening finds you beneath the arching lamps of the Théâtre de la République, where the air smells faintly of wax anxiety and someone's overcooked chestnuts. You're here for a play, another patriotic drama set in ancient Rome, because of course it is. The city's theater scene has practically abandoned powdered escapism in favor of moral allegories and toga-clad seriousness. You file into your seat with a murmured citizen surrounded by people whose hair could be catalogued in the Louvre rows of curled forelocks, disciplined buns, and more Titus crops than a Roman military census. The lights dim, the curtain rises, and the drama begins. On stage, the set is minimal: a column, a broken chain, a painted backdrop of a burning Senate. The actors stride forward with solemn conviction, declaiming lines about tyranny, virtue, and the sanctity of the Republic. You watch as the lead, playing Brutus, of course, delivers a stirring monologue on sacrifice lit from below, so his forehead gleams with perspiration and righteousness. But you're distracted. His hair is perfect. Short, curled just above the brow, with two spirals left unbrushed at his temples like the wings of a helmeted god. The audience is enraptured not just by the words, but by the whole Roman fantasy. And it is a fantasy. These men and women playing at antiquity are performing what the revolution desperately wants to be: clean, noble, virtuous, inevitable. And central to that illusion is appearance, especially the hair. Because you can say liberty all you want, but if you look like Louis XVI, no one will believe you mean it. The actress playing Portia Brutus's wife sweeps on stage next. Her hair is arranged in a braided crown, a popular coiffure à la matrone that every fashionable citoyenne is now trying to replicate. You've even seen wax figures in the windows of salons with similar styles, some more flattering than others. Hers is near flawless, secured with pins that glint in the footlights like tiny daggers. She speaks of courage, of shared sacrifice, of dying for the Republic. The audience murmurs approval. Someone behind you sniffles. You lean back and think, this is more than theater. This is training. Outside, the theater posters for upcoming productions promise more of the same. Camille et les Grecs, Lucius Junius Brutus, Le Jugement du Peuple, Titus et la Loi. Every one of them dressed in drapery and curls. One even advertises its lead actor with a side profile sketch that could double as a Roman coin. You make your way through the crowded foyer where fashionable citizens discuss the performance, with the same tone usually reserved for bread prices and guillotine gossip. One woman fans herself with a folded leaflet and says he captured Brutus's moral anguish and his hairline. That's art. Her companion agrees, adding that the curls were clearly styled with cedar oil, the Republicans' choice. It turns out some actors are now being hired specifically for their ability to grow convincing Roman hair. Wigs are no longer trusted, too royal, too false, too powdered. Real hair is in, and with it real politics. You hear whispers of an actor dismissed mid-production after refusing to cut his hair short enough. Looked too Jacobite, the director allegedly said. That's not just casting, that's code. Back out in the street, you spot a group of students reenacting scenes from the play. One recites Brutus's lines while another plays Caesar dramatically clutching his heart and collapsing onto a rain-soaked cobblestone with a loud "erg." His fringe flops heroically over one eye. A third boy shouts, "That's not how Titus dies," and throws a crust of bread at him. You stop to watch. It's ridiculous. It's heartwarming. It's revolutionary role-play through and through. You duck into a nearby print shop to avoid the sudden drizzle, and there on the wall is a broadside satirical cartoon, La Tragédie capillaire de la République. It shows Robespierre, Saint-Just, and Danton at a Roman salon, each arguing over which Roman hero had the best hair. Saint-Just holds a bust of Augustus, Danton cradles a mirror, and Robespierre, ever severe, uses calipers to measure his parting. In the corner, a wigmaker cries into his powdered comb. You chuckle softly. The satire hits a little too close to the truth. The shopkeeper, a lean man with the tightest crop so sharp it could slice bread, grins at you. It's funny because it's accurate, he says. The revolution's running on theater now. And hair. Never forget the hair. There's some truth to that. With so much of daily life uncertain, bread shortages, neighborly denunciations, late-night knocks on the door, people cling to the things they can control. And in revolutionary Paris, your hair is one of the few things that can still earn you admiration instead of suspicion. You return home and pass your neighbor Jacques, who was taken to reciting lines from Coriolanus while fixing his curls in a cracked bit of mirror. He stops mid-sentence to ask if your side part is natural or trained. Natural, you admit. He looks mildly envious. It's a strange time to be alive. Tyranny is falling. Or rising. Or maybe both at once, depending on who's speaking. But everyone agrees it's a time for transformation. For shedding powdered wigs and powdered ideologies. For adopting the hard curls and harder truths of a different kind of empire. And tonight you fall asleep with verses from the play echoing in your mind. If we must fall, let us fall with virtue, and let the curl of our brow speak for us. You're not sure if Brutus ever said that, but it would look great on a poster. By morning your pillow smells faintly of bergamot, and something else, maybe beeswax or defiance. You sit up slowly, rubbing your scalp. The curls you shaped yesterday have flattened into polite waves, which won't do. The Republic doesn't sleep in. The Republic gets up early, oils its hair, and faces chaos with precisely calculated volume. Outside, a new market stall has popped up on your street, wedged between a sullen fishmonger and a man aggressively selling onions. This one's different. The sign, scrawled in dramatic red ink, reads, Pommade pour le peuple, naturel révolutionnaire sans poudre. A young woman in a linen apron is arranging small jars on a crate. The air is rich with scent, orange peel, rosemary, lavender, vinegar, and something smoky. You wander over. She offers you a sample on the tip of a carved bone spoon. Our strongest blend, she says proudly. Smells like Brutus's funeral. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you dab some onto your fingertips anyway. It's surprisingly light, not greasy, and as you work it through your hair, the scent blooms into something oddly invigorating. You feel like you could argue with a king, or at least recite Cicero in public. Welcome to the world of revolutionary hair care, a booming industry fueled by politics, poverty, and a desperate need for both self-expression and self-preservation. With powdered wigs now denounced as relics of aristocratic rot, citizens have turned to oils and pastes concocted from whatever's on hand. Egg yolk for stiffness, vinegar to clarify, olive oil if you can afford it, pork fat if you can't. For hold and shine, there's beeswax or melted soap. You once heard someone used mashed turnips. They smelled like virtue, apparently. The recipes are traded like currency. On the walls of public latrines, you find scrawled instructions for a rinse made of boiled mint and lemon rinds. In a side alley near the Bastille ruins, someone has painted a step-by-step guide for achieving tightest curls with natural lift. Street performers sing jingles about civic scalp balm. Children chant rhymes that begin with Robespierre's hair, don't you dare. Historians still argue whether these products were actually effective, or whether the craze was more about symbolism than results. Some point to preserved jars found decades later that contain little more than pig lard and lavender buds. Others argue the impact was psychological. By applying pomade with purpose, citizens were mentally aligning themselves with Republican virtue, one oily strand at a time. There's even a pamphlet circulating under the title, The Citizen's Mirror, Reflections on Hair and Morality. It reads like a sermon urging readers to reject aristocratic powders and embrace the natural oiled discipline of the Roman citizen. One line stands out. As you shape your hair, so do you shape your soul. It's cheesy. It's a little terrifying. You find yourself nodding. You recall a peculiar conversation you overheard in a wine shop. Two men debated whether Robespierre preferred beeswax or soap flakes. One insisted he'd seen the incorruptible himself sniffing a pomade jar on Rue Saint-Honoré. The other countered, "He's above fragrance. His scent is justice." The argument ended with one of them storming out, curls bouncing furiously. That's the kind of world you live in now. You wander through a park where old sycamores cast shade over revolutionaries napping on benches. A group of women are gathered under one tree, dipping fabric scraps into pots of red and blue dye. One of them is also boiling something in a copper pot over a tiny fire. She tells you it's rosemary and nettles, good for scalp clarity. Helps align the follicles with virtue, she adds, absolutely deadpan. You help stir. Later, you visit a friend in the tailoring district, a place now humming with artisans repurposing velvet drapes into civic tunics. In a back room that smells like starch and lemon peel, someone is testing a new balm made from crushed fig leaves. It's for endurance, he says. Lasts through 2 riots and 1 tribunal. Not everything is so wholesome. There are rumors that some people are sabotaging rival salons by slipping caustic ingredients into their balms. A scandal broke out last month when a popular barber's pomade turned a dozen forelocks green. The authorities had to step in not because of the danger, but because the color resembled British envy. You hear whispers of a clandestine club called Les Aromatiques. Supposedly they operate out of a wine cellar and develop high-end Republican grooming products for the elite Jacobins. Invitations are rare. Their most famous creation, a citrus and tar blend said to be favored by Saint-Just himself. Cold as marble, the formula claims, and twice as lasting. You try it once, it burns. Your scalp tingles for hours. You feel strangely virtuous. The rise of propaganda through scent and shine is real. Some pamphlets even include fragrance samples. One folds open to release a whiff of pine and vinegar labeled, "For the Steadfast." Another smells like violets and charcoal for mourners of the Girondins. It's absurd. It's brilliant. It's revolutionary marketing. Back home, you work the last of the pomade into your hair, combing it carefully. The candlelight catches on the damp curls. You squint, trying to see past your own reflection to the bust of Brutus you saw in the salon, the one with the stern jaw and impeccable wave. You don't quite match it, but you're closer. And you realize it's not just about looking Roman. It's about acting like someone worthy of being carved in stone. You blow out the candle. The scent lingers. You step out into midday sun and nearly collide with a woman in a blood-red sash, her hair pinned high in what looks like an architectural feat of civic engineering. "Pardon, citoyen," she says coolly, as if she just descended from a victory frieze. The ringlets on either side of her head are so precise they must have been shaped with coins. Welcome to the domain of the citoyennes engagées, the politically charged women's clubs where curls, causes, and conversations collide. These are not idle salons filled with idle gossip. No, these are bastions of debate, loud with the rustle of paper petitions and the thwop of radical manifestos hitting scarred wooden tables. And yet, despite the serious work happening within every woman, here looks like she stepped off a Roman fresco. Hair is pulled into low chignons crowned with tricolor ribbons. Ringlets coil like question marks beside temples. Every style, no matter how artful, serves a message. You've been invited as an observer, though you suspect that's mostly because someone was impressed by your newly styled coiffure à la républicaine. Inside the repurposed convent hall, 20 or so women sit in a loose circle sipping weak wine and arguing passionately about everything from food scarcity to electoral eligibility. And yet hovering always just beneath the surface is the question of presentation. A pamphlet is passed around. It shows 4 bust-length portraits each of a Republican heroine with labeled hairstyles: Cornélie la Vertueuse, Lucrèce la Fidèle Sabine, la Résistante Agrippine la Silencieuse. Their hair is not elaborate, but it is intentional. Tightly pulled, controlled, symbolic, not a powdered puff among them. The youngest woman in the group, barely 16, reads aloud from Rousseau, while fiddling with a strand of hair that won't behave. Beside her, an older woman gently removes the strand from her fingers and pins it back into place with a bobby pin that doubles as a tiny dagger. Discipline, she murmurs. Even the follicles must know their place. You sip your wine and try not to choke. One speaker stands to deliver a short speech. We wear the hair of Roman matrons, not for beauty, but for memory. Because Livia walked beside power and endured it. Because Hortensia defended her sisters in the Forum when the men forgot their duty. Because virtue isn't soft, it's styled. There's thunderous applause. Historians still argue whether these hairstyle choices were genuine homages to ancient ideals or just performative mimicry. But that argument misses the point. The women of the Revolution didn't have statues or portraits in public buildings. What they had were their heads, and what they did with them mattered. In some districts, women have started organizing virtue processions. They march through the markets with their children all dressed in white tunics and Roman hairstyles. They chant about justice and bread and education. They distribute little combs to other women and urge them to join the movement Coiffez-vous comme une citoyenne, parlez comme une citoyenne. Not all are impressed. A baker shouts from his stall, "Curls won't cook a goose, he's pelted with rosemary." You follow a group of these women home to a cramped tenement where candlelight flickers against cracked plaster. In the shared courtyard, they unpin each other's hair, clean their combs, and brew herbal rinses from sage and elderflower. One reveals a secret recipe handed down from her grandmother, honey and vinegar left under moonlight to bring courage to the scalp. They laugh, they cry, they scrape soot from their mirrors, and discuss prison reform while adjusting curls. There's an intimacy here that no assembly speech could replicate. A child barely walking waddles by with a laurel crown made of lettuce. Everyone applauds. The clubs are not just about speech, they're also about survival. You hear stories of a woman accused of royalist sympathy because she wore her hair in soft waves instead of tight Roman knots. Another interrogated for possessing a hairbrush made of ivory aristocratic material. The fear is real, and so is the resistance. One woman points to the portrait of Agrippine again. She never had power, but she left a legacy. That's what we're doing. She adjusts the pins in her hair. Our curls are our currency. You visit a different club the next day, one known for being more radical. These women have shaved patches into their styles, claiming it's a nod to mourning, or perhaps to Roman slaves rebelling in the arena. Their leader, a broad-shouldered woman named Thérèse, wears her hair in an asymmetrical twist with a single curl dangling over one eye like a question she dares you to answer. "We are not ornamental," she says. "We are symbols." You believe her. On your way home, you pass a laundress with soot-blackened hands and a fringe pinned perfectly in Roman waves. She's humming a revolutionary song and eyeing you with amusement. "Too much pomade," she mutters. "Try boiling citrus peel with thyme. Less bourgeois." You thank her, file that away. Later that night, brushing your hair with the last of your rosemary rinse, you think about how many women across the city are doing the same thing. Some in mansions, some in cellars, all with different reasons, but the same intention to wear their politics like a crown. Not just on their tongues, but on their heads. And as you tuck your hair back into its proper Roman silhouette, you realize something quiet but powerful. This revolution isn't just written in pamphlets and laws. It's written in strands. The days are getting shorter now. Not by much, but just enough that you notice it. Shadows linger longer in the narrow Parisian streets, and the smell of rain-washed stone is giving way to the crisp bite of autumn air. And with the changing weather comes a new chapter in the city's strange civic obsession: public ceremonies. Civic festivals, commemorations, dedications. The revolution is in love with ritual, and naturally those rituals are packed with carefully curated curls. Today you're on your way to the Fête de l'Unité, a sprawling ceremony to honor unity, liberty, and Roman-inspired idealism in equal measure. The Champ de Mars has been transformed into a grand theater of the Republic. Temporary columns dot the grounds. Stages are draped in tricolor bunting. Wooden statues, some lifelike, some alarmingly abstract, depict liberty, fraternity, and reason, all with carved curls and confident chins. But the real show, as always, is among the people. Everywhere you look, heads gleam. The sun picks out polished coils and structured waves. Men wear short-combed curls that barely touch their collars. Women sport elaborate twists carefully pinned to resemble laurel wreaths or the rippling locks of Roman goddesses. Even children have been styled for virtue, as one pamphlet called it soft ringlets pinned back with scarlet ribbons like baby consuls. A marching band strikes up a brass-heavy version of Sa Ira, and a procession begins. You fall in beside a schoolteacher with iron-gray curls arranged in a kind of disciplined halo. She tells you how every student in her class had to research a Roman figure and wear their hairstyle to the festival. One boy chose Nero, she says dryly. We had a little talk. She gestures to a group of students carrying painted signs. One reads Education et notre République. Another simply says Think like Cato. All the children's hair is freshly combed and not one speck of powder among them. As the crowd flows toward the main stage, you catch sight of the day's living statues, citizens, who've volunteered to stand on podiums for hours, draped in togas portraying ideal Roman citizens and deities. You admire the commitment, until you see one man faint dramatically off his pedestal. His curls never move. A few stalls have popped up around the festival edges selling accessories to match the mood: olive branch pins, tricolor combs, even small tins of virtue paste promising extra hold for days of political fervor. A vendor thrusts one at you. Guaranteed to survive a riot and a rainstorm, he shouts. You buy two. In the crowd, you spot familiar faces, neighbors, co-workers, that butcher who always pretends not to recognize you. Everyone is watching the central stage, where a costumed reenactment of a Roman Senate debate is taking place. The actors argue about loyalty, justice, and taxes, while their wigs, or perhaps meticulously trained natural hair, shimmer in the light like halos of principle. One actor plays Cincinnatus. He removes a sheaf of wheat from his belt, declares his refusal of tyranny, and bows his head. The audience bursts into applause. His curls are perfect. Someone whispers, "A true citizen." You glance to your left. A woman wipes away a tear with the corner of her sash. "He reminds me of my husband," she murmurs. Before the trials, you nod. You don't ask. Historians still debate whether these public festivals were truly effective in stirring revolutionary loyalty, or merely elaborate distractions from food shortages and political terror. Some argue they were nothing more than a theater of control, offering a stage-managed idea of unity, while dissent brewed just beneath the surface. But standing here shoulder to shoulder with thousands of Parisians, you feel something real. Something stubbornly human in the rituals, the symbolism, and yes, the hair. Because the curls aren't just about fashion. They're about identity. You hear someone say the guillotine takes heads, but we decide how they look before they fall. It's morbid. But in this climate, morbid is a form of comfort. The festival ends with a collective reading of the Déclaration des droits de l'homme. A dozen voices rise in unison, echoing off the plaster columns and into the sky. People raise their fists or their combs in salute. As you make your way home through the thinning crowd, a young boy runs past you yelling, "I'm Brutus." His sister chases him, waving a paper dagger and shouting, "Well, I'm Liberty." Their mother laughs, adjusting her daughter's uneven bun. "You're both citizens," she says. "Mind your curls." Back in your attic room, you light a single candle. The mirror reflects your wind-blown fringe, messy from the procession, but still holding some shape. You reach for one of your newly acquired tins of virtue paste and smile. You warm a little between your fingers, press it gently into your roots, and reshape your curls. They fall into place. You look like someone who believes in something. Or at least someone who knows how to impersonate a Roman senator convincingly. And as the flame flickers low, you can almost hear the echo of the crowds, the laughter, the music, the speeches. You rest your head on the pillow, careful not to flatten anything. Tomorrow there's another commemoration, and more curls to tame. You're jolted awake the next morning by shouting in the street, not the joyful kind, not even the patriotic kind, but that sharp, anxious ripple that means someone's been arrested. Again. You creep to the window and peer down. A man is being led away, his hair still glistening with fresh pomade. Neighbors murmur, eyes wary. The charge, no one's sure yet. But someone says he styled his fringe in a swoop. Too theatrical, says one. Looked like he was mocking Brutus, says another. You sigh. Even the curls are political landmines now. It's become harder to tell when fashion crosses the invisible line into subversion. One misplaced lock, one overly elaborate bun, and you're a suspect. Yet somehow, despite or because of this danger, people keep styling. You wander to your usual barber only to find the door shut and a tricolor ribbon nailed to the frame. The neighbors mutter he's been taken in for symmetrical sideburns. You don't ask. Instead, you try a newer place tucked into the back of a tailoring shop that smells like camphor and quiet defiance. The barber there is young. His hands shake slightly, but his scissors are steady. He cuts your hair short, then adds a curl just above your brow. For softness, he says, but not too much. They'll think you're mourning a Gironda. You nod, unsure if he's joking. He probably isn't. Inside the shop, two customers argue over who wore it better, Saint-Just or the marble bust of Cato now perched in the bakery across the street. One says Saint-Just's curls were more divinely aligned. The other scoffs. Cato had integrity. His curls were earned. The tailor interrupts to ask if anyone's read the latest pamphlet from the Comité de Coiffure Républicaine, a new committee that's been formed apparently to issue guidance on patriotic grooming. You're not surprised. You're a little frightened. Mostly you're impressed. The pamphlet contains illustrated warnings. One shows a man with swooping loose curls, decadent, suspect. Another shows a woman with powdered hair, aristocratic, dangerous. The third shows a child with a perfect Titus cut. Underneath in bold, be like him. Historians still argue whether these hairstyle restrictions were officially enforced or merely the result of social paranoia. Some say it was a kind of spontaneous moral policing. Others claim local committees kept quiet lists of suspicious fringes. Either way, you don't risk wearing your hair loose anymore. You pass a neighbor in the stairwell. He eyes your head, then gives a subtle nod. Cincinnatus, he says. Good choice. That night, you attend a discussion group in someone's cramped cellar. They say it's about bread prices, but by the second glass of wine, everyone is debating hairstyles again. One man claims the reason Brutus stabbed Caesar was because Caesar dared to wear a Greco-Roman blend, too much Athens, not enough Rome. Another suggests that Marat's obsession with cleanliness extended to hair, and that his real political rival wasn't a Jacobin, it was dandruff. Everyone laughs, quietly, carefully. A woman in the corner stares into her cup and murmurs, "They say the guillotine makes your curls bounce once before the head hits the basket." No one laughs at that. You leave early, your scalp tingling with the kind of fear that lingers in your follicles. The wind bites as you walk. You pull your cloak tighter, and for the first time you wonder if it's all too much. Not the politics, the performance, the constant calibration of curls and character, the need to be Roman and Republican, groomed and grim-styled and sincere. And then you see her. Standing beneath a flickering lantern, arms crossed, is the woman from the Citoyenne Club, the one who styled her hair with a single dagger pin. Her gaze is hard. Her curls are harder. Nice parting, she says. Very Cassius. You think her confused. I thought Cassius was, well, a bit treacherous. She shrugs. Depends who's writing the play. That's the trick of it, isn't it? In this moment in this city, even your head becomes a script. And you're always performing. For your neighbors, for the crowd, for history, for yourself. Back home, you find your hands moving automatically, reaching for the oil, the comb, the small hand mirror chipped at the edge. You tame the curl that's drifted too far to the left. You adjust your sideburns just slightly inward. You smooth the back. It's not vanity, it's survival. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of hope. You sleep restlessly, dream of marble heads with judging eyes of hairpins that pierce through rhetoric of crowds whispering too wavy, too royal. You wake at dawn and comb your hair before you've even opened your eyes fully. This is what revolution does. It turns every mirror into a ballot. The weeks that follow blur together in a montage of political speeches, public trials and haircuts, carefully calculated to toe the revolutionary line. You've become something of an expert in reading faces and hairstyles because in these times, people's loyalty is often signaled not in words, but in curls. One morning you find a mysterious note slipped under your door. It's written in a spidery hand, the ink smeared as if by a trembling finger. It reads simply, "Watch the curls at the next assembly. They speak louder than the speeches." You pocket it and step outside, curious. The Convention Nationale meeting hall is packed. Deputies jostle each other like gladiators before a fight, their hairstyles ranging from clean-shaven heads to curly masses that might have been ancient Roman or just very unwashed. The deputies' wigs are gone, replaced by natural hair trimmed to revolutionary standards. But the way they wear it, tight curls, loose waves, neat side parts, has become a kind of code. You listen to heated debates about the terror, the economy, and the fate of the monarchy, but your eyes keep flicking to their heads. A deputy with a sharply curled fringe interrupts a speech. His curls glisten as he adjusts his coat. Another, known for his fiery rhetoric, wears a barely contained mop of ringlets to decadent whispers, a nearby observer. The whispers reach your ears, too. "Look at that one," someone says. "He's hiding his royalist sympathies in his loose waves." Another replies, "No, that's a Jacobin signal. See how the curls frame his face? It's a badge of purity." You catch a glimpse of a pamphlet being passed around, Guide to Revolutionary Hairstyles for Politicians. It includes diagrams of acceptable cuts and examples of dangerous styles. One image shows a man with a long flowing curl cascading over one eye, labeled aristocratic affectation. Another shows a neat row of curls just above the brow marked citizen standard. Historians still argue whether these hair signals were consciously used as political messaging or were just the product of social conformity and fashion trends. But in the charged atmosphere of the assembly, every detail counts. After the session, you find yourself in a nearby cafe watching the deputies file past the window. One of them, a young man with perfectly parted curls, catches your eye and gives a subtle nod. You nod back. It feels like an acknowledgement, or perhaps a warning. Later that night, you attend a secret salon meeting where poets and artists discuss the revolution's cultural future. The room is thick with smoke and everyone's hair looks like it was styled by ancient gods. A poet recites lines about liberty, the fall of tyrants, and the power of appearance. "Our hair," he says, "is our manifesto." You agree. Back home, your reflection stares back at you, curls slightly askew from the day's heat and worry. You smooth a stray lock and wonder how much of this, your hair, your identity, your allegiance, is truly yours, and how much is shaped by the revolution's relentless gaze. Sleep comes late. Your dreams are filled with marble heads and whispers of virtue and betrayal, where a single misplaced curl can change a man's fate. You wake with a start, resolve stiffening like your carefully oiled curls. Tomorrow you will meet the barber again, and you will make sure your hair says exactly what you want it to say. The chill in the air bites sharper now, and Paris seems to hold its breath beneath heavy clouds. The revolution's fire burns bright, but so does the fear smoldering beneath every handshake and whispered conversation. Your hair, once a simple crown of curls, has become a symbol carefully curated to navigate this volatile world. Today, you attend a meeting of the Société des Amis de la République, a gathering where artisans, intellectuals, and political enthusiasts share ideas and occasionally exchange secrets. The room buzzes with energy and the faint scent of rosemary pomade. You notice a familiar face across the room, an artist you met at the last salon whose hair is arranged in a severe Roman twist that seems to defy gravity. He's sketching furiously, capturing the crowd's expressions and hairstyles with uncanny precision. He looks up, catching your gaze, and nods knowingly. The discussion turns to the role of symbolism in the revolution. One speaker argues that the public's embrace of Roman hairstyles isn't mere fashion, but a visual language expressing commitment to Republican ideals. Another counters that the obsession with hair distracts from real political action, a frivolous mask for deeper anxieties. You quietly agree with both. After all, in a city where a misplaced curl can be as damning as a whispered accusation, appearance is survival. As the meeting winds down, the artist pulls you aside. "I'm working on a series of portraits," he says, capturing the new Republican visage. "Would you pose?" You agree, curious. In his cramped studio, he prepares plaster and brushes, asking you to hold still as he sculpts. The process is slow, almost meditative. You watch your reflection in the mirror, noting how your curls cast shadows on your forehead, how your eyes catch the light. The artist pauses. "Your hair," he says softly, "is not just style, it's history." You nod, feeling the weight of that statement settle like powder on your skin. Later, you leave the studio with a small plaster bust, your curls immortalized in stark white. It's both an honor and a burden. Back on the streets, the revolution rages on trials, executions, debates. Yet amidst the chaos, the ritual of hair continues unabated. People style, pin, and oil their curls with a fierce dedication that borders on reverence. You overhear a conversation between two women discussing the latest decree about acceptable hair lengths. One jokes that soon all citizens will be required to grow identical curls, turning the city into a Roman army of coiffed conformity. The other laughs, but adds, "Better a well-styled slave than a poorly coiffed tyrant." That night, you find solace in your nightly ritual, washing, oiling, and combing your hair. The curls respond, obedient and soft. You think of the artist's words and the countless citizens who use hair as armor and statement. Historians still debate whether these hairstyles truly united the revolution or simply masked its fractures. But for you, They are a reminder even in the darkest times identity expressed through something as simple as a curl holds power. You close your eyes feeling the quiet strength of your hair against your fingers. Tomorrow the revolution will continue, but tonight you rest in the comfort of your carefully styled past. The air is heavy with anticipation, a tense hush that seems to ripple through every street alley and salon. Rumors swirl like autumn leaves, whispers of change betrayal, and perhaps the final unraveling of the old order. Your reflection stares back at you from a cracked mirror, curls freshly oiled and carefully arranged, each ringlet a silent declaration of loyalty and resilience. You find yourself drawn to the Place de la Révolution, where the guillotine's shadow looms large, a grim monument to justice and fear. The crowd gathers in waves, faces anxious, determined, and somehow hopeful. You stand among them, hair glinting in the pale sunlight, a subtle act of defiance and solidarity. Voices rise in unison, chants for liberty echoing off stone walls. The air is thick with the mingled scents of sweat, vinegar, and the faintest trace of lavender from someone's pomade. You notice how the curls of those around you reflect the tension, some tight with nervous energy, others loose and resigned. A young woman nearby adjusts her bonnet, revealing a meticulously styled Roman braid beneath. She catches your eye and offers a small, weary smile. "For the Republic," she whispers. The spectacle unfolds, speeches, accusations, proclamations. You watch as figures rise and fall, their hair symbols of power, vulnerability, and identity. The revolution is not just political. It is deeply personal, inscribed in every lock and wave. Historians still argue whether the obsession with Roman hairstyles was genuine admiration or performative nationalism, but standing here you feel the truth lies somewhere in between. It was a way to claim a connection to ideals larger than oneself, to find order amid chaos, to craft identity when everything else was uncertain. Later, as twilight descends, you return to your small room, the city's sounds softened by distance. You remove your pins slowly, each curl releasing like a breath. The act feels intimate, a moment of quiet rebellion against the day's turmoil. You run your fingers through your hair, reflecting on the journey, a hair journey that mirrors the revolution itself, tumultuous, transformative, and deeply human. Your head finally rests on the pillow, the softness a balm after the day's storms. Outside, the city hums restless but alive, and you, with your Roman curls and a heart full of history, drift into sleep. Now, as the night stretches gently around you like a soft, dark cloak, feel the city's restless heartbeat slow to a whisper. Imagine the flickering candlelight dancing softly on ancient stone, the faint rustle of leaves in a distant garden, the gentle sigh of evening breeze through a window left just ajar. Your curls, once symbols of revolution and defiance, now settle peacefully like waves calming on a quiet shore. All the noise and fury of the day fade into a distant hum. The faces, the speeches, the secrets carried in strands of hair, all fold into the quiet fabric of memory. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, its hopes, and its fears. But for now you are safe in this moment, cradled by history's gentle hand. So breathe deep. Let your mind wander through the olive groves and marble halls of ancient Rome, where ideals were born and legends made. Let the softness of sleep enfold you, carrying you away from turmoil to tranquility. Rest well, knowing that in every twist and turn of your hair lies a story of courage, change, and the endless human desire to be seen and remembered.